Hey everybody, it's Friday night, so it's another episode of the fabulous Asea 5, if we do say so ourselves. So we meet here every Friday night to share information with you about these amazing molecules. Now we have a lot of healthcare professionals on the program, but this is not a medical company. It's not a medical product. It's not meant to treat, cure, diagnose anything. What we're talking about is something that's been discovered as one of the greatest health science breakthroughs that helps our body to do its job better. I'm Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas. Excuse me, and I'm joined tonight by Ann and Jim Glenn from San Antonio, Texas.
Hello.
Jim is our money man, and Ann is our personal trainer and nutritionist. And Dr. Lee Osler from Washington State, dentist extraordinaire and author of Redox Matters. Excuse me. And tonight we have a very special guest, Dr. Philippe Souvestre, who is our newest member of the Medical Professionals Board with Asea. And he is an incredible Renaissance man. He's from France, now in Canada, unbelievable. And of course, I just lost the email with his entire bio. But let me just tell you a little bit about this. It's incredible. I'm going to have him fill in the gaps. He's a medical doctor, but he is also a naturopath. He has a PhD in neuroscience and behavior. He has a diving certification in diving medicine, also diplomas in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. Just unbelievable. So he's got degrees from both France and US and Canada that runs the board, everything from traditional medicine to alternative and complementary. And he's now, just joined us a few months ago, and he's tearing it up in Asea because of what he's discovered with these molecules. So Dr. Souvestre, I'm sorry that I lost your bio, and please fill in the gaps because it's so extensive and amazing. So thank you, welcome, and it's so great to have you here.
It's an honor to be with you today.
Well, tell us a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell us about. How you went from France to Canada. How you got all those different degrees. Talk a little bit about your background in aerospace medicine. And my understanding is you were training to be an astronaut amongst everything else you were doing. So you're a little bit of an overachiever, I would have to say. Amazing.
I don't think so. No, I am passionate about what I'm doing. I was privileged to have wonderful mentors, starting with my own family. And my dad was a doc from the French Navy. And I grew up the first half of my childhood as a Navy brat. So you know what it means. You never stay too long in the same spot. And so because the lack of connections, long-lasting kids, friendships, etc., I became a kind of curious about what was around me because I was not always surrounded by other kiddos like me, and I have to keep busy. So, in other words, I began to investigate, inquire, etc. And I think I ended up as a seeker and looking for the Saint Graal, as we all do somehow. But in my case, it is to understand the mechanism and the logic about what the world we are immersed in and that universe we are part of 100%. So, and I think the rest stems from that. I became a flyer before driving a car, flying gliders, because the age permitting, but also because I wanted to explore. It was exploratory, testing out the things, the new elements. And then my first calling was exploration. I wanted to explore things as a theme of life, and I was an early teens when it began to turn into really a calling, I would say, which I began to identify. And I got involved in things, not always successful, but I tried out. And some were more successful than others, and I was more a fit there and not more of a misfit somewhere else. But I learned, and that's the way I understood that there were laws and principles in terms of how we operate, who we are, how we are made up, and how we perform. And we are equal in potentials, but we are not equal in practice. And that is where growth picks up. So I learned all of that on the grounds, on the field, And he resonates very well with the beautiful group of people who put together this Asea company. I cannot wait to mention that because I feel like a fish in the water. We are seekers. We grow. We are open to better all the time. And what we know is power, really. I learned that when I was a late teen, when I began to get close to the baccalaureate in France, which is a national exam everybody has to attend and to apply and succeed in to enter university. Otherwise, you stay on a different ways. So I learned that knowledge was everything to succeed, and someone who is deprived from knowledge cannot be a good candidate for success because he takes knowledge. And I could speak for hours about that. I won't, but you understand how important it is for me because I touched that many times and I still touch it on many ways.
You know, I love that. I love that you call us seekers because I think you're right. We're intrigued by it. I know when Redox was first brought to my attention, I had never heard of it before. This was 9 years ago. I'd never heard that verbiage. But I found the science so compelling that I couldn't leave it alone. And I can tell from your background, from flying to diving to, everything in between, you just like to have those experiences. You like to do a deep dive, kind of like our Dr. Osler here, having to do that deep dive to get the information, to have the understanding. And that's amazing. If you don't mind my asking you about your vision for medicine, because it's so all encompassing, all of the different fields that you have and all the different degrees. It appears that you were looking for more holistic. Would that be correct? Would that be fair to say?
Yes, this is the word. At that time, I didn't know the word because what I was enticed with was to understand for crossing information, you get to a next layer of information. When you begin to compare, analyze, and compare against, and get to this understanding of some kind of mutual interactions and mechanisms that become obvious to be depending upon each other, even to not only the first, but second, third, fourth degree, for example. That is a model of representation of the human body, the human performance, and the universe we are immersed in. So we are closely connected. And I am so grateful, our friend, Dr. Lee Osler. I am passionate. He made me further passionate about redox matters, Dr. Lee, than I was, because you compiled this information and went to healthy, true, well-established conclusions. And that ties with the duty of education we docs have towards our patients, but also beyond that, is to prevent. The beauty is to prevent before being in a place we have to resolve the problem. So this is a total discovery for me, and this like-mindedness has transformed my life, I have to say. This year is a turning point in my whole life, and I weigh my roots.
I love that. And I also love that you talk about Dr. Lee with the prevention, reading his book and bringing it up, because the dentists really kind of embraced that prevention long before we medical doctors did. You want to speak a little bit to that, Dr. Lee? And it's interesting that you were the hardest to kind of bring into this thing. You had to write a 358-page book in order to really accept it. So amazing.
Yeah, I had to, I guess that was my own form of brain damage, but it was interesting to validate, everything that Dr. Philippe's talking about. It was to go almost unaided and without anybody's prompting, to just go to the base PubMed research library and, to pull out almost 400 citations that told a story that we've been talking about for 10 years inside Asea. And so for me, that was extremely validating. And as far as the prevention thing, I think that has a lot to do, and I'm not saying this, to throw medicine under the bus or anything, but the origins of medicine as we know it today were not founded so much in dealing with root causes as it was dealing with managing symptoms and the outcomes of the basic, disease processes. And we could get into a lot of interesting conversation about the invested interests, of why that still continues with regards to medicines and drugs and surgeries and so forth. But we won't go there. But the whole concept of Asea, and with everything I'm hearing Dr. Philippe talk about, is this holistic. How does the body work? How do cells work? How do they function? And obviously, there's several ways of coming at it, but you've got to understand the rules of the cell. The cell only has one rule, and that it's its own rule. And however those rules are is what we have to do if we're going to awaken that inner doctor so that it can, both prevent disease as well as perhaps, unwind, the disease process if we're already there. So I salute physicians like Dr. Souvestre and you, Dr. Hayes, and many others who have, come on board. And it's not just us, but this as Philippe said, this like-mindedness about tapping into what the body, how the body actually works, and actually then providing support in a way that allows it to be healthier and to be more flexible and to metabolically function on its own terms. And so I think that is really the essence of prevention.
And it is astounding, like our colleague, Dr. Walker, who provides excellent education, scientific education to anyone who wants to hear it about, sorry. And for example, we know now that in a lapse of these past 10 years, as you all know here on this panel, from about over 600 publications written up about redox biology, now we are over 38,000 plus rising. So this is a boom in not only in the industry of pharmaceutical industry, because everything has been picking up on that, which is normal, but it's a part of those massive advances in knowledge with respect to life science. Is beyond medicine. It goes beyond medicine. It encompasses medicine. It's beyond it because it is so fundamentally essential. And in your book, you describe that excellently. It is life. I would say it is one of the secrets of life. The mystery of life is one. It is one of the link and the parameters of this mystery of life.
I'll make one more comment here, if I could, on the prevention, just to illustrate this. And again, not to disparage anybody, but I remember a few years ago, I saw a newspaper advertisement from a local radiology center doing mammograms. And the headline of the advertisement was "Prevent breast cancer, get your mammogram." And then I started thinking, as a dentist, do I take x-rays in the dental office to prevent tooth decay? And the idea it hit me, this isn't prevention. We might be preventing something from getting worse. I get that. But that really kind of speaks to the fundamentalness of what we're all engaged in. Is prevention. It's not merely the management, or we don't want it to get worse, or the management of a problem.
Right. Detection is not prevention.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love what you're both saying. Philippe, you kind of had mentioned it being us all being connected, everything being connected. And Lee, of course, you talk about that level between matter and energy, and it's so amazing that that's where we're playing right now. And I think that's what kind of pulls us all together. So, absolutely awesome. And I know, Jim, you have a question you love to ask from a layperson standpoint. So.
Well, I really right now, Doctor, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
What is your Asea story? How did you come across this? And my favorite question after that will be, how do you explain this to someone that knows nothing like to me? Pretend I'm a patient or whatever. How would you explain this to me? But first, how did you come across this? How did you find out about this?
I came across thanks to a profound friendship I had with a member of the same medical association I have been part of for over 2 decades. And you all know her. It is our dear friend, Marianne Siles. And she convinced me that she didn't convince me. She was convinced, conviction and convincing are enemies, remember what Tyler said about that. So she was totally convinced, and she communicated to me her conviction. So she didn't convince me. She shared her conviction and mentioned that I could benefit from that, this Redox technology on many ways. At that time, I was, health-wise, I was getting burnt out. I am very intense in my way to work, and my lifestyle is passion-led, sorry. So that is, we self-consume easily in this context. So long days, short nights for many decades. At the end of the day, one has to pay the bill somehow. And I was there. And I began to plummet. And everything I said, I went to see colleagues, doctors, etc. They wouldn't come up with anything particular. But what I felt was being in a zone that so many of my own patients, 2 decades, because I specialize in chronic incapacitated patients out of trauma. This is my specialty. And with intractable condition of all kinds, that means nobody can help. They are stuck, everything is done. At best, does nothing, at worst, it will deteriorate. So I felt myself trapped in that situation. Nobody mentioned I was ill about anything, etc. I was just exhausted, and I felt consuming myself into turning into a pack of ashes. Last year, three times, I thought I wouldn't see the end of the year. I was that bad. And I get connected with Marianne and a few other close friends, and she patiently reminded me, you should have a look at this, etc. Earlier this year, I gave in to her, and I say, well, in February, I say, okay, let's go for diligences, and let's make the diligences. I was on my knees, but I went there. It took several weeks. And at the end of the day, I walked in trust because I was so brain fogged that what I was reading couldn't percolate well. I was really there. And I gave it a shot. I signed up exactly the Sunday, March 28th, for those who want to check the calendar. It is that precise. At 2100 Mountain Time, I signed up. And 5 days later, I received my first delivery. I tested it slow, prudently, because I was in such a vulnerability that everything was kind of too much. For a couple of days, I went 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup at the end of the day. That was it, and watching. And I didn't feel worse.
Dr. Souvestre, you meant the cup that comes in the box, right? Not 8 ounces.
2 ounces, 2 ounces, yeah. And then I was so needy that I began, after the first 2 days of checking in, what I call checking in, I began to increase 1 ounces over ounces. And I ended up to 8 to 12 ounces a day. And within the first week, I felt that little flame that was gone within me, little flame just setting in again. And that means I felt myself. I was outside of feeling myself for a month. So that gives you the severity of the situation I was. And then within the next 3 weeks, I felt my energy rising. That was the first sign, energy rising, regardless of the symptoms I had. And then I began to breathe better. That was the major issue I have, respiratory distress, and nothing was working. And my colleagues' docs were scratching the tip of their head and didn't know what to do more on that. So I owe Asea, to make a long story short, I am now over 6 months of taking it, and I'm still improving on some detailed areas. So it's a constant rejuvenation, constant regeneration, constant repair for this regularization of what was dysfunctional, regardless of whatever it was. And we don't really know what it was. It's all about assumption, extrapolations, as it is about many chronic conditions which are intractable for us docs, and nothing can be really understandable. So to make a very long story short, I feel I owe my life back to Asea. Nothing else, because I had nothing else. So it's easy to come up to that conclusion. And this is, St. Thomas, I understand what he felt. And because I was on that seat. And walking in faith, trust, I trusted Marianne, I gave it a shot. And what she told me happened in a very foreign field of medicine and biology, because it is not my personal expertise. So I am very moved when I can see all of this, and this is a gift. The word gift applies very well to this. Sorry.
It's awesome.
I've heard people, and we've never really talked about this, but something you said kind of triggered it. As a doctor, how do you know that this was not a placebo effect?
Okay. Placebo, they don't work in distress. When you are in a place where distress is overwhelming everything, it is a matter of survival. Placebo will not work because the cognition is no longer there to convey the path to enable that placebo effect. Okay, so when there is no longer psychological strength and energy, placebo cannot just happen. It is impossible. Placebo is the illusion, or it's rather a feeling. I take something that I know is going to help me, and is going to help, regardless of whatever. Well, placebo doesn't work all the time. It is not automatic, and you have to have enough physiological strength to allow that placebo effect. But the more I know about cognitive information, cognitive processing in brain governance, other things, the more I understand placebo is an assumption in terms of understanding situations that are beyond reach. And it is like a drawer when you plunge in to use that word placebo when there is no other option to explain what is happening. So it is a elegant way to deny something or to cap on something with a word that is an empty word, because nobody can explain what is really a placebo effect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It is.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so how do you, if I walk into your office, how would you explain what these molecules are to me?
This is a very good question, and I'm not in a flattery business, as you know. So, first of all, I would say this is the missing link I don't have access to out of my own expertise. I can't, between quotes, I can stimulate dysfunctional circuitries related to the brain central controls to allow recovery when everything has been tried out and nothing works because chemistry is no longer in a pool and it becomes about physics. And this is a concept that nobody knows well in the medical world. It is a paradigm shift. I have been witnessing that and learning it. And what is behind this paradigm shift, and part of this is that cellular capability to repair itself and to communicate with other cells, regardless of their types, for the best of the whole organism. And this is amazing. And it ties very well with the model I came up with after 25 years of research. And this model is totally reliable in terms of brain trauma recovery, using a set of stimulation, which will activate cognitive processing, physical repair. And the beauty of this redox, let's say redox cellular activity, the native one, because the Redox technology is only an application to allow to use them and as a supplement. So they are tied, but the key phenomenology is the signaling molecules produced in the mitochondria, of the cellular body. The cellular as an organ, quotes, and each cell has that capability. And that is, for me, the missing link in my model, because I stimulate, but I had a lot of blanks, and this is why I always explain to my patients, there is a lot of blanks I cannot feel. I know the input of the stimulation, I know the output, but I know some parts of the between, but there are areas in my loop which I cannot explain, and I say that. So I would tell you, Jim, that the signaling molecule production is very likely one of the missing link, one of the blanks I couldn't explain so far, but this is one I can add up in my explanatory arsenal now. And there are very likely others. I have been working on the field of biophotonics, and biophotonics is the generation of a spark of light, which is nanoseconds. It's exactly the same description I learn, and we know about the phenomenology of the signaling molecules produced natively. And so now I could explain with biophotonics effect because I knew it was measured, it was evaluated over the past, I would say, 10, 12 years. And learning about these signaling molecules per se, now I could collect biophotonics, signaling molecules makeup in the same organoid in the cell. So for me, it is now we have at least two bidimensional aspect. One is called biophotonics, the other one is signaling molecules. But they relate, they are not the same, they relate to that phenomenology. This is why I use the word phenomenology, which is the study of the phenomenon in short. And it makes totally sense to me. And I can explain, as seen from my own expertise. And that is the beauty of my discovery, of this discovery. And this book has confirmed on an easy way, because he did a tremendous work, very hard to do. I am a paper reviewer for 25 years. That is well written. Yes, so this is fundamentally, we have the duty to share that in simple words. We don't need to be a scientist to explain what I said. Just reporting on that phenomenology is good enough, because the science for those interested in exists and is growing very fast. So,
wow,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the 3 and 5. Dr. Silverman has shared that, for years. And have you been able in your clinic or maybe just individual friends or yourself, have you seen some pretty cool testimonies or experiences with the Renew 28? Why don't you share about that?
The Renew 28, yes. The Renew 28 is really a tool which is easy because it is fast acting. The beauty is fast acting. So we don't need to wait weeks or months or sometimes half a year to see potent result in complicated and often long-lasting conditions. The Renew 28 gel is a topical gel, and it deals with the needy cells on the spot. The degree of absorption is relatively impressive. Yes, I have seen that on some of my patients. I've seen that on myself as well, occasionally. And within 10 minutes, you see a shift in symptomatology, which is extremely surprising because even homeopathics, which is fast acting, is not that fast.
That's great.
I want to talk about the gorilla in the room. When you understood that this was coming to you through networking, how did you deal with that? Did you care about that, or how did you deal with the fact that it's coming to you from not your traditional sources, but from outside of that?
As everyone, I had a dark feel about multi-level marketing, because the reason is, when I moved to Vancouver in '95, I was an easy prey for people looking for recruiting, etc. And being a doctor, I was led in becoming involved without knowing exactly where I would put my feet. And I learned, I was burnt, like many of us, unfortunately, in this. And so it was not a good experience. When I began to make my diligence with Asea, I went to read, to make my diligence with the founders. And I wanted to read anything I could put a hand on my eyes on, regarding Verdis and Tyler. And the only outcome I came to was a profound admiration, because it was a design willed for success and protecting people, to the exact opposite of the MLM montage. And the way Tyler names it in terms of next level marketing, the NLM, is night and day with this spectrum of MLMs we all experience, more or less, sometimes with more success than toll, or reversely. And when I understood the ethics and the care to protect and serve people, and not only in words, but in acts, in action, in facts, I jumped on the ship without any hesitation, because it was making sense. It was exactly what was my calling about as well on my own, far before I met Asea, the Asea team, and the Asea community we are part of. So it is a blessing. It is an extremely clever and advanced way of thinking. So as any paradigm shift, and I mentioned that earlier, in science, paradigm shift is expected, but not in terms of business model, right? And yet, Verdis has piloted that very successfully and came up and seconded with Taylor. I have a profound affection and I would say love for those people, because we are brothers in arms. I have marched on that path decades before we meet, and I wish to meet them in person someday, the sooner the better, because we are very much alike. And the confirmation I see between my own journey away from being have any influence or any mutual link, if you will, between us, whether as persons or in a field, etc., because they come from a totally different walk of life for me. And we were thinking and applying the same rules of engagements independently without knowing each other. And then we discover each other. It is a revelation that not being alone in thinking on that way, we are in a turning point in the advancing the modeling of this business modeling of this business model, forgive the repeat, but it is the design, because it is for the good. It is for the good of man. It is to serve people. The calling is there, and the calling is always there, and is echoed every single time there is an action put together, whether towards our community as an associate, so internally in the company, or with people outside, which we feel the need to educate, because we don't want to leave these people in a shade of ignorance. Opposition is there, but opposition will be always there. This is I am not a priest, I am faithful, but I am not a preacher. But you know, the battle between the good and the evil has always been there, will be always there until the end of ages as announced. But I am like any of us about this. Common sense, what I call common sense, rely on that. And it is tragic.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that these days, right?
That is tragic because people get hurt and stay hurt without having the opportunity to choose on a fair grounds, because they deny the fair grounds, because they have been hurt deeply, and they are bounded. They think they are bounded for the rest of their lives. They are not, but they think they are. And that is the challenge we all have to pass, to hop over this massive obstacle. But I think with kindness, compassion, sense of service, demonstrations, and relentless patience, I think everything is possible.
Well, that was beautiful.
Because love is behind all of this. Yeah.
I love that you call it a gift too. You know, it's interesting because there's so many healthcare professionals. You're our 20th member. Both Dr. Osler and I are part of the Medical Professionals Board. You're our 20th person to join, and we literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of healthcare professionals who are part of Asea. And I like to say that, you know, all roads lead to Redox, all roads lead to Asea, because I think there's a lot of us who are awakening to the fact that traditional medicine doesn't have all the answers, and that there are other things out there that we need to be exploring. And just like you said, this is the missing link. This is foundational. This makes everything else work better. Yeah. So I'm so thrilled that Dr. Sidis, Marian Sidis, who is also a healthcare professional, she's an advanced practice nurse practitioner, and she's in aeronautical medicine as well. Also, right. She's a badass. I mean, she's what, a colonel in the
She's a colonel of the U.S. Air Force, retired, and she has an exceptional career. And she's a born leader, and she's a working heart. So combine that, and you have Marian Sidis.
I think we need to have her come and join us.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And maybe we've already talked about this, but we heard it today, actually. Okay, you guys are all docs. This just sounds crazy. This just sounds too good to be true. Dr. Philippe, how would you respond? Because I agree, when I first heard about it, it sounded crazy. It sounded, really? Come on, guys. It's salt water from Salt Lake City, dietary supplement. You got to be freaking nuts. But what do you say to that?
I have two types of answer, depending on the degree of friendship and love I have with people. If they are too aggressive to me and stupidly negative, I say, go back to school. Update yourself.
Go study a book.
Go back to school and study. You have things to learn. You know, you left behind here about advanced knowledge. And that is with, you know, the aggressive, I stop here.
That was a beautiful
now
answer,
with the others.
I love that.
The ones with egos,
With the others,
yeah, right.
I am placing myself at their disposal to convey all the information and the knowledge I have, and to the degree they wish to know. So I am a health professional. I am a medical professional. I am a scientist as well. I have had a career as a mentor and training others. So I have learned how to approach people about knowledge and conveying that knowledge. And, you know, everything is possible. With good people, everything is possible. With people who deny evidence and think they know better, it is sad to see that they may keep others in the shade then they become accountable for their own deeds. And I mentioned that to them. I have to. And I'm not judging. And I say, I'm not here to judge anything. It's not my place. But don't do that. You know, it's about basic common sense again. Common sense is important. Yeah.
Philippe, did you hear Tyler was on our show last week, And he said something, and Lee, you probably, I know you went back over that that interview because so many of the things he said were so profound. But he was talking about it being like the greatest gift of friendship, sharing this with other people.
Yeah.
You know,
Sharing
you know
what
what,
we
Dr.
know is good is a duty for those who don't have that good, regardless of what it is.
But we wrestle, but we deal with, yeah, but you're just trying to, at the end of the day, they're going, yeah, but you're just trying to sell me something. And Philippe, you said it beautifully, because with love and compassion, not everybody's going to believe this. And
so the address, you have a very good point. My way to overcome this, and I'm getting better at it, it has been a very stretching exercise for me to get for, the medical world I am and the technical world I am in, to adopt and ride this business model, because I was told I am not a businessman. I am not. And it's not my thing. But I am able to ride a ship or to ride a horse to get to my point. So it's a matter of learning how to ride a horse. It's a matter of learning how you fly a plane or steer a ship or steer a vehicle, to take analogies, to get the mission done. And when people go back and you say, oh, you're trying to sell something, I said, no, but I have to ride the business model that goes with it, because I'm not accountable for it. I didn't invent it. And the reason why, and I can explain to you why this model has been chosen and selected and elected for better success and to serve you better. And
Beautiful.
Here we are. That's my way to flip the plate around.
wow.
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting though, as medical professionals, all three of us, and probably you as well, Jim, in the financial field, or Anne as a nutritionist. You know, when I would give my best possible information or ideas, or, you know, come up with a treatment plan, it was never with the thought of what was I going to make from it. You know, some things are more expensive than others, but that was never my criteria or my reason for recommending the things that I did. And I think that's why I don't have a problem here. I've always made my living by helping people have a better quality of health and a better quality of life. And this is just another way of doing it. I'm just paid differently. So, you know, it just doesn't bother me.
Exactly. And the beauty of the system is everybody has equal chances to share these benefits. They have the liberty to refuse. They have the liberty to ride the model, to learn it. You know, not everyone wants to ride a horse. Some prefer to stay walking on foot. And I don't think it's always the best strategy when you have a horse.
Yeah. Now, how do you like the VIA line, being that you're still new and you obviously have background in naturopath and functional medicine. So,
is it in Canada now? I don't think it's in Canada.
Yeah, the nutritionist. Yes,
we have access.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
for a few
NFR.
months.
Yeah, some of our team is there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so just curious, you know, it marries so wonderful with redox signaling, right?
Exactly. I understand the beautiful marriage between those technologies. I think I don't have better words to explain that, because it is combining the best of all together. And that is not always the concerns of, you know, the vast majority of providers of this type of vitamins, minerals, and enzymes of all kinds. But the match with fitting what we know with cell biology in terms of signaling molecules, production and process. And when there is a research towards fitting to this phenomenology to enhance the effect of vitamins at the cellular level, which any nutritionist knows and claims very justly, righteously. So now it is another winning challenge here, because the paradigm shift is expanding. Now everything is thought through that lens called cellular signaling molecule production. So concocting, for example, a nutritional balance mix outside of this paradigm and concocting a similar mix, not in terms of product, but in terms of genesis, in terms of design, in a light of this cellular production, native cellular production of signal molecules. The goal is to enhance that production of signaling molecules using nutrients that are more specifically targeting mitochondria and other organelles in the cell. So it's feeding the right level of this metabolic loop, including the Krebs cycles and other functions, on a way that was not done before. So this is a breakthrough on its own.
That's right.
And it's expanding.
Yeah, Lee, you said something earlier I would like, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit more about, but understanding the rules of the cells. Then you said something else. It's the rule of, I mean, could you re-explain that or say that again, please?
Are you
the
talking
rule
about
of the cells? No, Lee Osler brought that up earlier on, right? Was that Dr. Philippe?
Yeah, I did. We have this, I don't know, when you think about the question, how does the body work? We've spent, centuries trying to figure out how the body works so that we can improve it or, avoid the things that harm it or provide things that will help it and so forth. And the whole point of science and discovery with regards to the body, physiology and anatomy and so forth, is to get down to the smallest foundational level and ask the question, what are the rules that govern how a cell works? Because a cell it's a function of biochemistry and physiology. It's a function of pH. It's a function of electrical charge on molecules. And it's not sitting there thinking that it had a bad meal, or it's not thinking that it is tired. It's not thinking that its pH is wrong. It just is. I mean, and so these molecules that have electrical charges on them are responding to what we call the milieu, or the environment of what it lives in, the ocean, the cytosol inside a cell, and there is the electrical charges. There's pH considerations. There's every protein is charged in a certain way and made up of different amino acids, for example, that determine its shape, which determines its function. And so it's not sitting out here thinking thoughts. It's like when we say, what does a cell think? Well, it doesn't think, it just responds to chemistry. Those are the rules. And so we're over here trying to get down to that bottom level and saying, well, if I'm doing anything other than what the rules of the cell dictate, I'm going to miss somewhere. And if I play the game by the rules of the cell and provide the cell with what it wants and needs so that it can optimally function, then I win. And an example of that is in the mitochondria. We know that, the question is, and Dr. David Nieman in his great research at Appalachia State on the Krebs cycle with Asea showed that Asea redox signaling molecules helped shift the mitochondria into choosing to burn fats from triglycerides in preference over glucose. Well, that's a rule. It's like, why does the cell choose to do that? It's not thinking about it. It just does it because we provided the right conditions for it. Aside from Asea, the cell does that when it's in a fasting state or when it's in a ketosis state, for example, and then it will automatically begin burning fats. But if I don't provide a low glucose environment for the cell, then it's going to burn glucose and I'll never burn fat. And so Asea does something magical. I'll call it that because it's hard to describe it in real technical terms here. It does something wonderful in that it induces this switch, for example, to shifting the metabolites of Krebs cycle, the Krebs intermediates, and how it processes energy. And it's just doing that automatically because of the conditions that we played the game by. And so that's what I mean. And if we get all weird about it, we can go in to talk about drugs. We can talk about nutraceuticals or herbs. Those are acting on the cell. And what we're talking about is the rules from within where the inner doctor expresses, I call it. And it's the gene expression that naturally occurs in response to the conditions there. And we have to play the game by its rules or we lose.
Exactly. I totally agree. And I have the same experience using stimulations, because stimulations are about physics. And when you see physics hindering or enhancing chemical loops or chemistry processes, and I ended up in explaining to my patients that physics would govern over chemistry. I ended up with this understanding through what I have learned and what I have observed through time. And some of the studies I have been running confirm that as well. So it is another demonstration of this paradigm shift compared to the simplistic model we have been learning all a few decades ago. And now it's taking a new order. There is a new order there because of the advanced knowledge, the additional understanding we have. Yeah, those things have been always there, but we never saw them, we never touched them, we never experienced them. And we certainly didn't have the technology to do so. So this is also the reflection of the advanced technological advances in that particular area. And I encourage everyone to go online and explore the Nobel Prize research count since 1998. There are 6 of them. There are a number of nominations who didn't receive it. Nomination were including also Redox molecule research. So it is out there, and it is a paramount paradigm shift in terms of giving more depth to a system we thought we knew well. And yes, we knew it well without that depth, but now we have that depth in addition. So we are adding a new technology and a new understanding of things. It's very, very inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do I want to go with that? Look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not medical. I frankly, and it sounds like you as well, Philippe, I trusted my best friend. I trusted the person that brought this to me. I didn't need to see any of the science. I saw what it did to my best friend's son, who had a life-threatening challenge, and now he doesn't. I didn't need to see any of the science. Now, there's 2 schools. There's a school that needs to see the science, and we've had medical people that said, no, I don't care about the science. I want to see the stories. How would you respond to that?
Results. I am blunt about results. If we have results, it's going to be the right science behind to explain. And if the science has not been performed, it is time to ring the bell and go for the science behind results. Results are paramount. If you do something to someone in need and pull that someone outside of the hole that someone felt, for regardless of the time and longevity in there, it's worth the attention for science to go and back up that observation. We call that, when I learn medicine, I learn also medical ethics, like any of us. And part of this significant amount of knowledge, which guides us in our practice and through a lifetime of service, and protect, and providing quality assurance to protect the public, etc., etc. The thing is, we have the duty of information. We have the duty of backing up what we observe going well, and not throwing the baby with the bath when we declare it's useless, it's too good to be true. Referring to your comment a few minutes earlier in a session, it is unethical to deny the evidence of something that is multiplied and on a good way. Mm-hmm. It is organized crime against humanity in my eyes.
Wow.
And why should that be allowed and enabled against the interest of many? There is no ground to stand on this.
Maureen, could you explain? We've got 4 minutes left and we are going to have our after show, but we will shut off the recording in 4. why isn't this FDA? Why didn't it go that route? I mean, if this is as phenomenal as everything we're saying, then why didn't it go through the FDA or whatever
I
organization?
think I can answer that, but after you, Maureen. After
Yeah.
you.
Well, no, go right ahead.
No, go ahead, Mary.
Well,
No, you go.
No, you go. Well, Dr. Lee will
No.
jump in. I'll tell you that was a sticking point for me when I
Right.
was first looking at it. I'm a
I knew
physician.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, my husband's a physician. He's a researcher. And the original technology was developed by a medical company that was under FDA review. They were trying to get a classification as a drug. They couldn't determine what's called an LD50 or lethal dose 50, where half the animals, which is, archaic, but still considered the gold standard, half the animals would perish when they were given it. In fact, from what I understand, the more they gave the animals, the better they did. So the FDA pulled away and said, this is not a drug, it's at best a supplement. And unfortunately for that company, fortunately for us, they lost their investors. And the mother company was kind of selling off the technology like a fire sale. Vertus Norton was our founder. He was sitting on the board. He had been brought in to try to find money for the company. But he was brought in, it was too little too late, but he saw the power of the technology and had the foresight to put a group of investors together to purchase the rights to the technology. And then he hired scientists to find out the mechanism of action and to be able to stabilize it in solution, which is what was considered to be impossible. And that's the real kind of beauty behind this product. In fact, it's sort of a trade secret how they were actually able to do that. But when my husband and I first got involved, we met with Vertus and we had dinner with them, and we were kind of sitting there with our arms crossed across our chest, not really buying into the whole saltwater thing. And he was just so charming, and he just disarmed us. And one of the things he said to us was suspend disbelief. And I said, I kind of pushed it with the FDA, and he said, here's the truth. We probably could get FDA approval. He said, but we know what the product is. We have all of the toxicity studies. It's 100% non-toxic. We know how powerful it is. And he said, it would probably take $10 million and probably that many more years, 10 years or so, in order to get that FDA approval that would have one indication that you would have to go to your physician to get it. And he said, in that time, all of those people would suffer. They wouldn't have access to it. He said, what we decided to do was bring it to the market, give it to the people. We know it'll help them. We know it won't hurt them. And we're going to let science catch up with us. And that's what we're seeing now.
Well, that was beautiful, Maureen. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Philippe, how would you respond to that real quick? We got a couple of minutes. If we go over, the Aussies aren't there. We don't care now. Go ahead, Philippe. How would you respond to that? Because I think I'd like to hear your answer.
Yeah.
Again, this is echoing what I was saying. Science has to follow the real world and not the opposite. People who are blindly relying on science, regardless of the quality of the science, it could be of excellent quality or poor quality, that is the experts to decide. But the efforts of research should establish evidence of good things and not only discarding bad things. So it's a mindset. And the FDA has a very important role. What happened through Maureen's report is showing that the FDA just applied the regulations, and God knows how the regulations sometimes needs some amendments and refreshment in terms of policy writing, because what was true a decade earlier is no longer fit now. The policy should be amended on a constant basis. I have a taste for regulations. I am a regulator as well. I have been writing policies all my life out of interest for this, because it is what is consolidating real life and make it practical and make it accessible and warrant quality assurance. Without policies, we are doomed, because the louder will be the right one and people shyer will disappear. No, policies protect. So this is why I think we have a role in terms of the Medical Professionals Board, as well as the headquarters of Asea, in terms of exploring the new paradigm shifts in terms of flight envelope compared to an aircraft capabilities and performance, and help our world to evolve in the light of what we know well. It ties also with our duty of information, duty of education, duty of making things right happen, and not being at the expense of moody, unmotivated, sometimes people in charge.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Lee, I
Thank you,
want to
Tom.
ask you one last question before we shut the recording off. Why will there not be any medical studies against issues? Why won't we see those? If that's a fair question.
Well, it is a fair question, and let me jump on that. Maureen, you kind of answered that a minute ago when you talked about the one indication.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like if we decided to go back to satisfy all these brilliant physicians that are having a problem with this and scientists, and we decided to do that, then suddenly we're making a medical claim because we're studying a specific medical condition, and now we're not a supplement anymore, and we're back to that $10 million conundrum.
Bravo,
Yeah.
bravo,
If
Lee,
not,
because as we all know, compliance is key to protect ourselves in terms of beneficiaries, in terms of providers, and in terms of the people who make it happen, who make it up, the researcher, the technicians, the technologists who at Asea, Asea company, are making up and apply the highest gold standards that we can find in terms of quality assurance for making up and delivering this product with ultimate caution. And I've been around in terms of pharmaceutical industry of all kind, and also biotechnologies, because my company has an interest in that as well, on my way in terms of stimulating things. But we are in charge, and nobody can do it. It's on us. The onus is on us to, with respect to the compliance, make sure people get the understanding of things on a proper way. It's not always easy because, of course, it will depend on the quality and the education, the degree of education of the audience in question. And sometimes you have also agendas linked to interest. So now we are hitting a wall, which is of a different order. And I won't even enter that domain because it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be dealt with. Yeah.
Well, guys,
Yeah.
thank you. Maureen, who do we have on next week?
Scott Aldred, he's absolutely brilliant. He oversees our production facility, does a lot of the testing.
Very good.
He's actually, you guys, we owe him a huge debt of gratitude because he's the person who worked day and night to develop our Renew 28. So we love Scott. So it'll be a real treat to have him on here.
We get to hear the backstory,
Yeah.
things that a lot of folks don't know. So please come back and see us. As always, we will be here every Friday.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you guys coming. Dr. Philippe, thank you so much for joining us. Maureen and Lee, you guys, this is phenomenal. So thanks. We do this so that people have the right knowledge, get the heart, like Dr. Philippe said, and just go talk to people. The only way they're going to hear about it
Speak up.
is if we talk.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. Just hold on. I'm going to stop
Thanks,
the
Philippe.
recording.